I'm good to go.
Yeah, I'm here, Jansen. Thank you.
Wait on, or should we get started?
That's fine.
All right, it's 5 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting to order. We've got John Marriott joining us virtually, so all 4 members are here. We are now at quorum. So official roll call, everyone is present. All right. Next item, public comment.
See if anyone should know.
Sorry.
No, I have one online. No one signed up to speak there.
Then we'll open it up in case any of you do have some public comment.
All right, Brad Walker, you're first in line for public comment and unmuted.
Good evening. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Brad Walker, Superior, Colorado. Just want to make some simple comments. I know that things are really a little bit of a political chaos right now in terms of Rocky Mountain Metro. You've got 2 lawsuits against you. You're down a bunch of board members. You got a CNR that is trying to figure out a path forward. As an outsider looking in, what I see is a lot of political hot potato going on. And that definitely concerns me because at the end of the day, that doesn't make good public policy. And I perceive the Jefferson County Board of Commissioners in particular, Leslie Dahlkemper, is using this as a political football for her endeavors in future office. And I don't think that this is beneficial to the aviation community, and I don't think it's helpful to the airport. And I think that any incoming airport director is stepping into a quagmire that is going to be unfortunate for them. And I hope that we can try to tone down some of the political rhetoric and move forward in a more positive fashion. Thanks for taking my comments, and you folks have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Brad. Any comments from the room? All right. We'll move on to our next item. I'm really excited about this next presentation that we're going to have. We asked Jim Dunn with Bio Aerospace to come and sit with, I'm sorry, I missed something. Approval of minutes. Before we jump, I'm just so excited, Jim, about the presentation. I wanted to skip right over minutes. You all should have in your packet the January meetings minutes. Were there any changes to those, or can I have a motion to approve? You have a motion?
A second.
A second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, now back to what we're really excited about. I had the chance to meet with Bio Aerospace about a month or so ago, and for many of you in aviation, you may know some of the technology that's changing in this world of trainers, but it was newer to me, and I think it could be newer to a lot of people in the community. So we thought it'd be a great chance to invite Jim to come in and talk about Bio Aerospace and the future of this training industry. So without further ado,
Well,
I'll turn the floor to you.
If you don't mind, I'll stand over
Perfect,
here.
come on.
If everybody can hear me. That way, if you guys have questions, just hammer out. So, my name is Jim Dunn. I'm with Bio Aerospace. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. George Bai, who is our designer, conceptual designer, and Rod Zastro, our president, couldn't be here tonight, so you got me. I'm excited to be here. I'm actually a native of Jefferson County. So I was born and raised here, lived outside the state for quite some time, primarily working with private equity, moved back to take care of aging parents. And one of the board members and I went to the University of Denver together, and he asked me to come in and take a look at this. I do have 2 boys that went to the Air Force Academy. They're still active Air Force. One of them has flown 3 drones, just finished up a year at DARPA, and is now working for the Pentagon. My other one just got back from Kuwait, and he's the acting contracting officer for Air Force out at Nellis Air Force Base. So I have a little bit that I can talk to them about. Theirs is mostly confidential. So, well, first of all, thank you for being here. We're out by the Centennial Airport. I don't get a chance to come out here as often. I was raised just down the street from Lutheran Hospital, and still have property in Jefferson County and Boulder County. So we love it out in this part of the world. So what is Bio Aerospace? So we want to be the first FAA approved, FAA certified electric aircraft. and conventional. So you see the eVTOLs and, which are the vertical lift off and, takeoff and landing. We're different than them. We're really a conventional plane. So, Ben, would you mind going to the next? Sure. Okay, so again, we're a Colorado-based company. Again, when I left Colorado, and my wife and I are both natives, and so are my kids, you know, tourism was number one, mining was number two, or they were always like, it's a surprise to see aerospace being the number one industry in Colorado. And in fact, on a per capita basis, we're number one in the nation, and only number two to California in total overall spend, which is amazing. So congrats to all these people with all this enthusiasm and what we've been able to focus on here. So what makes, you know, when there's a ton of information out there on electric aircraft and how it's going to change things, what makes us unique, I think, is we know what industry we're trying to disrupt, which is the aircraft training industry. And why? Because the technology, battery density, electric engines, everything that we put together exists today to build this plane, right? So we actually have an experimental plane out at a hangar, our R&D hangar at Centennial Airport that's flown several times. But we've designed from the ground up plane that we're in the middle of getting certified with FAA right now. So why electric aviation? And I know the one that surprises me, and I've had a chance to meet with Jansen and Mr. Marriott and a few others up in this area, is the biggest controversial issue out here is the noise. I would have thought of carbon, lead, but why is there really an interest for potential flight schools to buy it? It's the efficiency. You know, we operate so much more efficient than others out there. So we feel like we've got this kind of perfect storm of bringing the right product to the right area to disrupt, and that's the story here. So I think, you know, our MMA, you know, that by leaning into electric aircraft as it comes, you have a chance to be a first mover. So if we go to the next slide, and why it's important, I think, I'll talk about the senior leader. You can't see it. On the very left is George By. George was a pilot for the Air Force, trained for the Air Force. I don't know how many years it is, probably 20 plus. And then he became, started working with Boeing. He's an accomplished designer. He's designed for a number of folks, but he's also been one of the very first innovators for electric application. And he's by one of the local companies, XTIA, which just did a reverse public. George did a lot of designing work for them. He's done more design work for Boeing and a number of others on the electric. Rod Zestro, who's right next to him, you haven't seen him. Rod was flew F-15s. He was worked all over your world, 25 years plus in the Air Force, and then went to work for aircraft training school. He ended up working for a different part of Spartan, because I think there's a Spartan group that's actually trains out here. And he created the Spartan training in Saudi Arabia and many parts of the Middle East. Became one of the largest. It's backed by a private equity group called Sterling Partners. And Rod saw the beauty of electric many years ago. He was actually the first ones to put in an order for one of our electric planes. He's put in several more. The opportunity for leasing, especially in that aircraft training marketplace. And then I'll point out just a couple others. Right below Rod is John Knutson. John, again, these are all, John was a Navy aircraft pilot. Went and got his law degree, worked for the FAA for many years. So that's our kind of our secret weapon. He also was a founder of Mark Air, for those of you who know Mark Air. So out of this group here, they've got over 20 planes through FAA certification. So that's obviously, you can't do it without it. And so.
Not the guy on the top right.
Tom Bowen? Yeah, Tom Bowen, do you know Tom Bowen? No, so Tom is a great guy. He's the chief engineer. He's worked for Mooney. He was the CEO for Mooney, for several others. He is kind of the energy behind, actually so much of the engineering, between him and John Knudsen, integration with, the certification process. John actually sits on the board of Gamma as well. And so, all these guys, if you want to, you know, real aviators, passionate like you guys, there's a lot of them you should talk to, and I'm probably a poor substitute, but we appreciate it. David Raleigh on the lower left is another guy I mentioned. He's going to be our manufacturing guy, and when we get to full manufacturing, we'll create, we hope to produce over 1,000 planes a year. So let's go to the next slide. So why is this important? I'll start with what is the problem we're really solving? It's really the fact that we're not training enough pilots, right, for the what we need to do. And again, right up in Jefferson County, my mom taught here for 40 years at St. Peter and Paul. My dad was a research technician for ERI, which is a subsidiary of DU. These are amazing things for our kids, right? If you want to say, hey, we have our problems in different areas, but those who lean into it, become the engineers and everything else, they're going to have wonderful careers and worlds ahead. I talked to a potential investor this week. He's personally flown to 180 countries. Can you imagine? Right? How does that open up your world? Right? And so why is aviation exciting? This is one of the reasons. So what this slide tells you, if you were looking at the thing, would say, hey, we're about 60,000 pilots short over the next 5 years, right? And so is training important? It absolutely is. Does it have any problems? It absolutely does, right? So, but this is a marketplace that we can certainly lean into. And what is it, Metro? I think one of their biggest programs is flight training, right? So, and they do their actual flight training out here, right? Yeah, so what an amazing community. Can I have the next slide, please, Ben? So, again, you can't see it, but I can tell you kind of what this says. So number one is, we're trying to, my job is to engage with private equity guys and institutional investors and strategics like United and Delta and all that, to raise money to realize our dream, right? And so in the past, we would tell you, they've raised over 45 million, but that doesn't get you there when you're trying to get a new technology through FAA certification. So I'm not here to raise money, but I am here to tell you that, you know, kind of what you have sitting in your backyard. So number one is we have an outstanding team. We've de-risked this. There's not anything on this, on the technology we're going to show you. That's the plane there, by the way. Everything about that, everything that goes in, the motors, garment, on the avionics, we try to use as much off the shelf as we could. And we designed it just specifically for flight school. So it's not fancy, you know.
Did you design the airframe? It looks a lot like
Yeah.
a Lancer.
Yeah, George designed the whole plane from the ground up just to disrupt this market. So, it is all carbon fiber, but almost everything else in it, we are integrating. So batteries, electric engine, and all that kind of stuff. We have a kind of a list of what we're doing. So from that standpoint, it's de-risk on something that can actually work. So in our FAA certification, we've been, has anybody been through an FAA certification? It's an absolutely scary process. There for a reason. If you have an electric car and your engine fails, what happens? You end up outside the road. It can be totally different in an airport, right? So the safety aspects of this are really incredible. But we are the only ones that have gone all the way through the FAA to have what's called the means of compliance, which means we have 16 different areas to test, and we've agreed on what the testing will be for all 16 of those. So our next phase is actually to raise the capital to build those actual conforming planes and have them basically test them until they fail with the FAA, so we can get FAA approval. Our overall time to do that, we expect to be about 2 years. So it's not that far off, and we would love to figure out a way to do it faster. The other thing we would say is flight schools, they really need it. So flight schools work really hard, you know, to have or make some money. Why are they interested in this? Our technology, if you said, The last time we looked was about $158 an operating hour for fuel and everything else, maintenance, the whole thing. For a conventional plane, ours is under $40 an hour. So that is why the flight schools are interested in this, right? So right now, even where we are, we've got 900, order book of over 900 planes. 40% of these are offshore. And you can imagine what the operating cost is in Japan or, the Middle East or something, UK, actually, a lot of these orders in UK, Canada, and whatnot. Which is interesting because, the one thing that's been really fun for me is to see how global this whole environment is, which is really cool. Let's see, what else do we're looking to be, again, sustainable aviation. You guys probably already know this, flags way behind everything else. And again, you talk lead, why does lead have to be, is there, alternative fuels that are being developed that are lead free, the carbon and everything else? Ours is no carbon, no lead. It is very low noise. So, it was tested by the Forest Service. Well, we have a slide in here actually that, 500 feet overhead is almost imperceptible. Of course, this would be fine in some of our most treasured areas. So let's go to the next one, Ben, if we could, please. Okay, this one we go quickly. Again, I was just going to show that out of the 900, that's the number of countries that we have orders for already. And we just added 400 in the last quarter because we have leadership that understands marketplace. So let's go to the next one if we could. Yeah, again, we'll go through this quickly. The one thing I'll point out there, those are, on the left is what we call our E-Flyer 2. It's a two-seater. That's the first one we want to get through certification, and that's on purpose. The more we add, the more that goes on there, the harder it is to get through certification. We will tell you the story that we put everything in Siemens in a big CAD system that they really wanted to develop for the aviation marketplace. So they came to us. They've donated all the software. We're the people process technology. We're the people, and together we have this technology behind it. 100% of our design on that E-Flyer 2 is in the system. If I had 3 engineers working in it, if one made a change on this component, it automatically propagates throughout the whole plate. So this is something that there's no other group out there, manufacturing and design group, that's doing that today. And the advantage of that is when you look at the next one right in the middle, that's our E-Flyer 4. Over half our orders are for the 4-seater because that's how a lot of flight schools already train. 60% of what's in the first one is already propagates right through the E-Flyer 4. And so when we get E-Flyer 2 through certification, we expect it to be less than a year to get the second one because it's all the same. What's also interesting is, and again, if we were out at the shop, you'd see it, the motor itself weighs about 60 pounds. It has 150 horsepower. It's pretty cool. And then we have the 12 battery packs. So weight-wise, it's about the same as a conventional, the way it's been designed. It's which is kind of interesting. Conventional full of fuel. So now, one of the variables for early training aviator is dealing with the variability of weight change and things like that. Ours is much safer. The other thing is, if we were training in this is how much noise we've had to train. There's a little bit of pop noise. That's about it, which makes it a lot safer. We've also added parachute system to it. The center of gravity in this thing is so tight that the FAA said we don't have to test that with weight change because of the way that it's been designed and built. So on a conventional, they have to test 5 or 6 different parts. This is actually there's hundreds of different testing opportunities. So with the tangible addressable market, all that says to an investor, it's a big market. So if I invest in this, I know you have a lot of people sell to for a long time. So we go to the next one, Ben. Environmental benefits, go to the next one. So again, it is highly efficient. No CO2 and no lead, right? And so Ours, on a battery, that picture on the left is actually our experimental plane that has flown several times for the last couple of years. The motor in that, I think, is a Rolls-Royce. We're now working with Safran. But 96% of the energy in our battery packs will translate into our duration, right? Versus a combustible engine, which is 46%. So that's a lot of where you have inefficiency and everything, and other things. So the other thing is one moving part, you know, but the way they build these things is that they're dual wound, which means if you're taking off and you lose one side, you still have 70% of your power. Which is so from itself, now you wouldn't have the duration, but you would certainly be able to safely take off and land, which is pretty cool compared to conventional. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so again, we actually have applied, and we hope to hear by in the summer, an FAA grant on sustainable, and it's millions. The more that we put these in the air, it's millions of metric tons of CO2 that we avoid. Now, George would say, Jim, CO2 is just an indication of pollutants that are put out there to add up, but it works for any of them that you want to pick on. And you know, it's readily available. It will change, you know, how an airport looks. You know, you're going to need to charge. By the way, charging tends to be a question. If you have an electric car or a Tesla or something like that, it's going to be very similar charger. If you're talking about duration and how it works is trickle charge it to full in the morning. You go out and do a sort thing, you know, an hour and a half or whatever with a student. You come in and you put it on a high capacity charger, and within 20 minutes, it's back up to 80%. And so the FAA is not going to let you run it all the way down because that's too dangerous. But we can operate between 30% and 80% all day long. And actually, when we look at availability of training hours, that for a flight training school, we have more per plane than a conventional. Like barely, because we don't have to. Our engine's probably right now is rated to be somewhere in the 8,000 hours to be rebuilt. But if we expect it to actually go higher. And if you look at batteries, the curve for density and everything else is just starting. So this all exists today. So we think it'll get better. If we go to the next one, please, Ben. Low noise. So again, I was mentioning the National Park Service as one of the ones that when you talk about noise. So again, 500 feet, it would be pretty much imperceptible. Is the way it is there. Let's go to the next one if we would, you know. So I think, you know, we do, again, it's hard to see, but on the product benefits, again, I think we've talked about a lot of them. Because it is lighter, and it's been designed from the ground up. Actually, versus most of these seaters, we have about 2 inches more in the cabin. We have, let's see, where are other things? You have cabin width 46 inches. Thank you. That's helpful. And yeah, so it's meant, the 2 seaters meant for crew about 450 plus payload. So if there's 2 of me in there, you're pushing it. Jansen and I would have problems.
It's gonna work.
It's on the plane endurance.
3 hours. So
I just can't read the footnotes.
okay, the footnotes are basically saying it's actually, it's an all composite. So it says E-Flyer 2 or general aviation, all aircraft, all electric aircraft with composite airframes.
Not the ones at the bottom left,
Oh, the bottom left one?
Yeah, right, it's in those.
Okay, Biospspace is, okay, the footnotes there on the technology partners, we have a tier 1 and tier 2 technology partner. And yeah, so we are working with best of breed partners like Safran, Garmin. Right now, we have 2 different battery companies that we're working with, one's out of Utah, so EP Systems.
What kind of batteries?
Lithium, they are lithium ion, they're designed different than a car battery. So they look about, You know, they're about this big, they have titanium, because you gotta be very careful about runaway, stuff. And they also have to be vented out the plane if there is a problem. And so there's 12 of them, so that they're, yes, again, when you look at, not causing fires like you hear in the news, but we have to get through all the certification of them. So they are right now pretty expensive, but we expect them to come down, especially once we get the old market. Now with the next one. So this is, actually, you don't need to read all this stuff, but this is the very end. Thank you very much. Which is, we're targeting the aviation training marketplace. Why are we doing that? There's a lot of reasons. Number one, it's a low cost market for us to sell into. We're doing fleet sales as opposed to one or two. Right? We understand that marketplace. It is the basic training. We've been recognized as viable through, 900 orders. As soon as we get our first plane in the air, which we hope to have by this time next year, we expect that to almost double. So we have momentum, we have viability, FA, again, we kind of talked at least through the process that we feel like we're in a pretty good place. I'll be out in DC in about 3 weeks and get to so sustainability trends. So ESG is kind of a funny word in the United States. When you get to Europe, ESG is very well adopted. But if you look at like Northern Europe, they actually have laws that say within the next 5 years, they're going to get rid of those hops if they don't find a more sustainable way to do it, either through fuel or other things. Ours is safe and it's available today, and we think that ultimately will be a big part of our market as well. So on impact, again, we talked about, we get the full production, we'll create about 3,000 jobs. So if these are good STEM-related jobs, we have the Western Hockey in here the other day said, hey, we want you to bring them here. We've got all these displaced workers. They'd be perfect for it. So, yeah, we always plan to keep our headquarters here. There are some issues with carbon fiber at altitude, but integrate pressure, gravity, all that kind of thing. So if we can get to more of a sea level, we can do it in both places. It's just cheaper. And the same thing here is, as we all know, our cost of labor here is getting really pretty expensive. But we expect we'll be doing a lot of integration and other things here. May not do just the production of the actual things. So that's my conversation. You guys have been really kind and patient, and thank you for your.
Thank you. It's a good looking aircraft.
I'll say, I'll help you.
Nice glide. It looks good.
Yeah.
But you mentioned a half an hour to recharge up to 80% after taking it out for an hour and a half. What would it take to charge it if you took it on a trip with its full 3-hour range?
So again, that was kind of funny. So we had the one thing that, there's a few areas that we had to do some design, like on the garbage control. So obviously we don't have a fuel gauge. We have a kilowatt, kind of, and we can only go down to like 30%, right? So, but if you took it down to that 30% in 20 minutes, you're back to 80. So depending on your charger, there's different, but if you're in a high capacity charger, it can come back up pretty fast.
Why RMMA?
Okay.
What would you do here at the airport?
Well, first of all, they were kind enough to invite us, and actually, like, several have been down to visit. So I think right now, I would call this, community outreach. And they have a training school here, which is, there's concerns about that, so, they're a target market for us, number one, and, but I do think when you look at, I drove up there, it took me an hour and a half. And what would if I could jump hop in my little plane and come out here, what would that be, right? And it's $40 an hour. It doesn't become affordable, right? So I think, when a lot of, it's amazing airports like our MMA really come to us, and primarily because of the same problems you guys are here to solve and talk about. The debate, like noise and communities growing noise. This is exactly the kind of community that we should be working on. No carbon, no lead, and low noise, so we can be good neighbors.
So, question, maybe you had it up there, what's the cost of this plane
Ah.
with the charging unit?
Okay, so the charging unit itself, then again, they change, but, we have one down in our shop, it's about, between 35,000 and 50,000. And that could charge, 4 or 5 planes. And I was out at the NBAA show and again, you can put these cars on charge batteries on trucks and charge different ways. There's different ways to solve the problem. And there's a bunch of DOE money to help electrify some of these airports. So that was part of it, because what was the first part of it?
Yes.
Cost of plane. The E-Flyer 585 is what we have it targeted as right now. So it's very competitive with, the conventional planes out there. And we're about 700,000 for the E-Flyer.
So, there's at least 3 flight schools out here. And probably 4, maybe, okay. And so probably the smallest flight school might have 20 planes. The largest one, probably 35 planes. They're all on the ramp out here. These planes have to be hangared? Do they have to, can they be outside? How are you gonna run all the electrical to these planes?
Yeah, well, so that's something that we have to solve with the airport folks, right? And in fact, Rod was just out at a conference on airport electrification, which I wouldn't have thought there was a thing like that, but it is, and there's a lot of good people thinking about it. But they don't have to be hangared. Ours, again, it's carbon fiber. Carbon fiber's been around for a long time. When we look at utility of it, we actually have a better rating than, the average age of a training plane today is 45 years.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing that's kind of fun, I think, is ours are smart. We have sensors on everything. So we can drop all that information we collect into the decision support system to increase the efficiency of training, our pilots flying safely, our maintenance, all of the above, right? How do we develop the next generation of engines and things like that? So versus all this information that's not being captured today, right? So I think, according to what I've been told, these are my guys who, operate the flight school. They feel it's a really good solution. Again, we have one out of the UK, but they have a big flight school in Florida, but they've got 50 planes on order right now. So we want more of those.
One more question about that.
How many aircraft do you have flying today?
0. This is late stage venture. So we have an experimental plane that has proven everything. We've got all the design out there. But our next step is to build that conforming plane that FAA approves. So that's exactly where we're at.
Have you had an actual flight test of the E-Flyer 2 proving the 3-hour battery life?
No, we have, we have had our experimental plane, which is more, conventional, that we put all the equipment in it and flew it, but not at the same density levels that we would have in this.
One more question on the battery capacity. You can only take it down to 30%. Does that count as your 30-minute reserves? I don't know how they translate it. Conventional aircraft. you need
Another
30
great
minutes,
question.
45 minutes.
I'm gonna refuse to answer because I'm not the qualified guy to do it. But my understanding is that is not your 35, your 30 minutes.
So you need 30 minutes on top of it. 30%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 3-hour range,
So
it said in the footnote that 30-minute reserve. So that would only take you from 100% down to 30% plus whatever it took to have 30 minutes in reserve.
Okay.
Give or take a half.
Yeah, and again, that's why we like training schools, because they're typically not
Close, yeah.
3 hours sword tank, right? They're gonna be underneath that, if I'm trying to think. So the majority of it will, again, we can meet our mission in this marketplace. Thank you. Thank you for all your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
and talking to us. So, one of the things that we really wanted to do with this is, I had someone tell me once, congratulations, you're not special. The issues you're facing are the same thing every community, every airport's facing. And I think this really highlights that this is a national and even a global conversation. There's a lot of work happening in this space to have the same conversation. And these avenues and these opportunities that are happening on a global and national scale impact the conversations we're having locally. And the burden's not always on us to figure out every single solution right here at RMA. We've got to look and see what's happening all around us and how that's going to influence and change some of those dynamics. And I think what you guys are working on is one of those dynamic changers in ways that we can talk about it and have the conversation, because it's important to get that first one in the air. It's got to go through all the FAA. None of us want it not to go through those rigorous processes, but we're at the mercy of working through those processes for these realities. So, Jim, your team, thank you again. We appreciate you coming and talking to us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, Jansen, do you mind if I make a quick comment?
Oh, sure. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, and I apologize for being on Zoom today. I know it's awkward to do these kinds of meetings like this on Zoom, but I just wanted to make a comment for us in our role as the Airport Advisory Board about this. I think our MMA is unique in some ways in that we have a significant amount of developable land here, and in an airport with a big runways and a tower controlled configuration, and RMMA has lots of options. And I think as we look at our role as advising the county on the airport, these types of opportunities, if it comes to be, is really important for us, both for the airport as a way for the airport to thrive economically, but also for our communities. So this, something like this, if Buy Aerospace could locate at Rocky Mountain Metro and be, selling multiple thousands of aircraft by whatever method they use to manufacture, it's a big, strong point for the whole region. Jefferson County would certainly benefit, but my community of Arvada would benefit, as we would have workers and companies who would do business within the whole work stream, as would the northern communities in Boulder County and Louisville, and certainly all the communities around. And so as we look at, this airport, we can look at things like this that are really positive for kind of everybody around. That's on kind of just the economic development side. I think for us then also in our capacity to advise the airport, we should be just keeping in mind as these new technologies emerge, things like, the electric infrastructure on the ramp of the airport will be different probably in the future than it is now. And, as we look at our capital plans and master plans, our business plans, whatnot for the airport, that we keep in mind the ability that the future might look different, and that there may be, as we have opportunities to prepare for the future, I think we're better off. And then the final benefit really is not the primary one, but certainly makes a lot of sense. And that's, this airport, like Jansen said, is not special. Most every airport around the country has people who are impacted by noise and complaining about noise, and the leaded fuel thing is certainly going to be solved in the future. But, this addresses all those things. It's a carbon-free way of flying. It's certainly, there's no lead emissions, and at a greatly reduced noise. And so it kind of really makes a lot of sense from a whole bunch of angles. And I think it's amazing that Jim and Buy Aerospace have got this company going off the ground. I went and toured it, as you did, Jansen, and I was quite impressed with where they're at and the integration of the systems. And being a pilot, although a neophyte one myself, I was quite impressed with where they're at on the development of this aircraft. And I have no doubt that in the very near future, we're going to see these production models of these, out and working. So congratulations to you guys to making this happen. And, as you progress through your process of getting your certifications and building the company into, what's ultimately hopefully going to supply many, many, many training aircraft across the country. My hope is that RMMA can play a part in that we're a piece of that. And my suggestion to you guys at Buy Aerospace is stay in communication with us and let us know what you need. We have the whole area will benefit. The whole area may be willing to invest. And I'm really happy to see us working on things like this that potentially are really good things for the future.
Thank you, John. One of the last couple of months where there's been a lot of fun is to have so many people from Jefferson County come and visit us. So we really do appreciate the attention, and hopefully we can continue to learn more about each other. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. All right, any last questions or comments on Buy? All right, we're going to move into airport updates. Stephanie and Ben, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. I'll do the first two and then I'll pass it over to you, Ben. So our first update is the Airport Advisory Board appointments. So Ben and I spent an afternoon and reviewed all of the applicants and presented those to the commissioners. A lot of the public have reached out to our commissioners asking for specific individuals, and so they've decided to go through an interview process, and so they're selecting the 4 that we recommended as well as 4 additional. So they're going to go through 8 interviews, and then after that they'll appoint 4. So I don't know the exact timeline, but we are believing that it's going to take place in May. It hasn't been scheduled yet. So we're trying to have our full board intact in the month of May. Worst case scenario is it would be June.
Will there be any criteria changes to the advisory committee seats? Is that part of the discussion or not?
Not for these appointments.
Right.
There is additional conversation and a request to add additional seats for general aviation. And so that hasn't been briefed yet, but that's just in the conversation stage right now to add additional seats. So it would still remain a 7-member board with 1 alternative.
And then the defined criteria within those 7 individuals.
Correct. We're keeping the same criteria. And then the airport director recruitment. So that's going really well. We had over 36 applicants. We were hoping for 8 to 10, and we had 11 that met the tier 1 qualification. So they go through and obviously submit their resume, cover letter. They fill out different questions in an essay form, and then they also submit 3 video responses. So it's a pretty in-depth packet, and I just received those this morning, and so I spent my entire morning and afternoon reviewing all of that. And so right now we're looking for panel interviews Monday and Tuesday. We have an internal panel, which consists of airport leadership team. We also have procurement, because airport works with procurement on quite a bit of things. County attorney representative that supports the airport, and then our development and transportation, because they work hand in hand. So that's the internal team. And then the external team, we have Jansen. We also have John Marriott on there. And then we have Garrett Baum with Urban Frontier, who sells our non-aviation land. And then we have an FBO and then a flight school. So there's 5 on the external panel. I'm actually going to be sitting in on both of them. And so that'll happen Monday and Tuesday. After that, we'll select the top 2 or 3, and they'll go through background check, and then they'll come in person. So we'll fly them in person. We do have interviews with commissioners, as well as our county manager, myself. They'll meet with airport leadership, and then also do open forums on May 2nd. So the community will have a chance to meet them. And then at that point, I'll have all of that information and data to be able to make an offer. And then it'll really just be about transitioning in when they can move here. We are going to take them on a tour and give them an opportunity to look at the area in case they need to move here as well. So that's that. Ben, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right, unleaded fuel, we're learning more and more about it as the months go on. Right now, I feel like we have potentially 4 good options to make unleaded fuel happen here, hopefully still in 2024. So the first one was the one we had always considered, which is we potentially get an FAA grant, install a large tank in our bulk fuel facility. That's an option, but there's also a tank that we don't think will be used for much longer associated with one of our larger corporate hangars. That's currently a Jet A tank, but it's a possibility that the airport could take that over and convert it and use that tank and then use our fuel truck or work with one of the FBOs that deliver fuel. But then the other option that kind of came up more recently is just installing the self-serve tank. They're adjacent to the one that's on Signature's leasehold now or one on Shelter's leasehold. And I think both FBOs are interested in discussing that further. So there's a lot of things to still evaluate. There's a lot of details in terms of pricing, because if you can take a full 8,000 gallon truck delivery, pricing is probably gonna be a lot better than if you're having to buy it 1,000 gallons at a time. So then there's discussions over that and who will service the tanks and who will deliver it. So all these conversations are ongoing, but we're working on it. If anyone has any other solutions or suggestions, please let me know or let airport staff know. We're considering all options at the moment.
Can I jump in on that one
Sure.
before we move to the next one? So one of the things we want to do is, so we're still gathering information. We're like fact finding right now. We need to understand all of the costs that Ben just said. Once we come up with like those viable solutions, we'd really like to have that conversation here at one of our future advisory boards, so we can really kind of talk through those things. There's so many different things in terms of servicing, service agreements, you know, who owns the infrastructure, all of that. Not to mention, do we have bulk or self-serve? Number of things to talk through. So we would love your brain power to help us with that.
As part of that, because I know some of the nuances we've talked about is planes have to go through a certain step before they can transition from leaded to unleaded. Maybe some understanding around how many of our planes are ready for unleaded and timelines to get them there. I think that also
For the certification.
impacts demand. I know there's a cost associated with that. I don't know that I personally, just being me, I haven't connected all the dots on, okay, we've got unleaded, how long until it actually can roll into the planes?
And the other crazy thing right now is like, right now, my understanding is there's essentially one fuel. You can use Swift 94 UL, which is at Centennial, but perhaps within even the year, there may be other options that are certified and, you know, and then it's just a matter of scaling things up. So yeah, things are changing quickly and making sure the aircraft can use it's important.
What it takes to certify an
Sure.
aircraft. So for the 94 unleaded, Swift sells their STC for $100. I already bought one, they'll work for the 100, but they get there. Gimme, on the other hand, for their 100 UL, they charge by the horsepower. So I supply a twin engine, it's got 650 horsepower. So it probably cost me around $1,200 to get. You don't, nothing converts. It's a label you stick on your plane.
So
It's
it's
a-
nothing mechanical.
It's a supplemental type certificate that authorized, it's just an authorization issue. It doesn't, there's nothing that changes in the plane. And the fuels intermingle. I mean, I have to burn 100 octane fuel. I can't burn 94 octane. But a lot of the planes, the Cessnas can burn the 94. So one of the questions to think about as you're going forward with your fuel tank is what's the future of the airplane? The airport, are you gonna sell 94 unleaded and 100 unleaded? That's gonna be a function of the price differentials.
Sure. Yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you.
I think along those lines, you mentioned the unleaded 94 Swift, but also the possibility of the 100 unleaded coming out. Would we get discounts and pricing since Centennial also uses the 94? What kind of volume does that look like in this region versus the 100, and what kind of options do we have there?
Yeah, that's another discussion we've had is if we can get other airports to all accept a portion of a, you know, fuel truck. I don't know where it's some, you know, I know one of our FBOs gets a truck coming from Texas, you know, and so that's a big delivery charge. So yeah, another thing we're talking about that needs to also be a discussion with other airports potentially. All right, I'll carry on with part 150. So we had issued a request for statements of qualification. Applications are due for that on April 15th. So that's, I think, Monday. We're briefing the Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday just to seek their full approval of us pursuing a federal grant to match, and it's be a 90% grant for this estimated $2 million study. And then, so we'll have hopefully responses, hopefully more than one, but maybe one, I don't know. A statement of qualifications, so we'll need to pick a consultant to help us develop a contract and a grant application for the FAA. We're hoping to hit the 2024 grant application window with the FAA, and that'll require we really get going on that with the consultant we select. And that's where we stand on that. And then we look forward to moving forward on the airport noise study.
Any question on any of the business items?
I came in late on all this. Why are you doing a 150 study?
It has been a request of many community members to include 2 U.S. House of Representatives. The airport's position for a long time was it would be great to do in theory, but we did not want to absorb the $2 million cost ourselves because we didn't think we qualified. But I think because of those requests, perhaps from the U.S. House, the FAA notified us we were eligible. So now it's just a 10% cost of the airport. And I think it will provide great data to inform where the noise impacts truly are. And also my favorite, I've said this many times, my favorite part of, like, if you review other airport noise studies, you get to recommend strategies to reduce noise, and the FAA has to respond to it and actually signs off on those, forget the name of the actual report, but it's the one clear way I've seen to actually say, here's the noise impacts, here's some recommendations that might address it, and you get the FAA to say, you can do that one, you can do that one, you can't do this one. This is a very clear process I think will kind of help out all stakeholders understand.
Maybe I was reading the wrong part of the federal regulations, but it seems to me that they state that the goal of the 150 study is to advise you on what to do with land surrounding the airport, not to reduce noise, but to determine how areas that would be impacted by the noise are utilized.
I think that's one of I think it's one of 4 or 5 categories of recommendations. It's the one you're thinking of.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think that's like in the title of one of them is land use compatibility. But if you review Centennial's Part 150 study that they did in the past, I haven't seen their most recent one. There's also operational recommendations like changes flight path 15 degrees or, things of that nature. So I think there's 4 different buckets of that recommendations could fall into, and it's not just land use, but I think that's also.
I'll go check theirs out.
Yeah, I think that's an important one.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on business items? Airport Advisory Board future agenda items.
The question here, I think, the intent was to ask you all, going forward, what this group would want to discuss, hot topics that are in front of your mind. So it's not just, airport staff kind of bringing things forward. I will say, I think we had discussed perhaps using the next month as, well, assuming new members are on board, as kind of an orientation. So we can bring forward a presentation that's, and this would be review for many of you, but like how, the basic structure of this airport, but, airport sponsor assurances, airport land use planning, we still get a lot of questions on what's the difference between an airport master plan, our strategic business plan, the work of this group. So we could kind of do a nice kind of heavy presentation on that to make sure everyone's up to speed on land use and airport operations. But then I think the question is, where do we go from there? I mean, obviously the topics we've talked about would probably come back, but is there anything else?
Well, I'll speak on behalf of you two. It's kind of funny because that'll be a great refresher for everyone on this. I think John and I are the only ones that have been here since before November, and these two kind of got thrown into a very unique circumstance. So I think that'll be much needed. And I think after we go, and it may be across 2 meetings that we do this orientation. Yeah. And then I think you can probably get a lot better feel and response from this board. But I'll speak for myself on, I serve on this to be an asset to you guys as staff to bounce ideas off of. And I think you bring a collective of unique voices. I'm a non-pilot. We've got pilots on the board, and I think utilizing that collective of voices to really shore up your decision-making processes, thoughts, is a critical role of this board.
I would echo what Jansen said, especially on orientation, because I know it's been an interesting few meetings. And I think that could probably wait till we get a full board, so we don't do it multiple times. But I think I'll level set on the orientation, and then go forward from there. I think what you mentioned around land use planning, operations, financials, I think we could always bring advice towards. But again, what Jansen said, maybe a 50-50, we can bring some things to you, and then definitely bounce everything off of us.
Ben, I think your suggestion of using the airport advisory board as one piece of the puzzle as the airport sorts out its unleaded fuel plan, I think is really good. And I think that's something we should really be involved with. And not that we're the most important voice or a deciding voice, but that we're part of the discussion on that. I think there's a lot to consider, and the broader that discussion is, probably the better it is for you guys as you try to actually make the decision. So I would certainly engage us for that.
I would offer up the other two that I could see this group being used heavily for is when that Part 150 gets underway. Sure, we'll be reviewing that with you all and seeking your recommendations on that. And then the other one that this group has been valuable for is anytime there's been proposals for changes to flight procedures. We've formed an airport noise task force, and there's always been at least a couple of you who have attended those meetings, or we brought the recommendations directly here. So assuming those discussions continue, we always appreciate your input there.
Awesome. All right, next item on our agenda, confirm next meeting date. I know you said in May for the next round of board members. I'd love for our next two meetings to be around that orientation and that. If we stay on our typical schedule, that would have been Wednesday, May 8th.
Okay.
Do we feel like those appointments will happen by then?
Could we keep the May 8th meeting, and then if for some reason the new members are not appointed, then we just cancel and move everything to June?
Everyone on the board comfortable with that? Just for clarity's sake, that June 12th.
Yep, that works for me.
I think that makes sense.
All right, we got consensus there. Any last comments before we adjourn? Last comments from the crowd? All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Adjourned at 5:58. John, thanks for jumping on and joining us virtually.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for your time. Sorry I wasn't there in person. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye, Sean.
All right, thank you all for coming out tonight.
No, yes, it was, so be able to get Dan.